bringing you what you've always wanted, power beyond your wildest dreams, and it's only the beginning.
Hey there, quirky people. Carnage is one of the more deranged symbiotes in Marvel Comics. Given the fact that the original host of the Red Clinter was a serial killer, Carnage soon adopted Cletus's brutal approach as his own. You may also know that a few characters have hosted Carnage through the history of Marvel Comics. Today we're going to talk about all of them. Now, some of these characters are part of the same story arc, but there is something unique to each and every one of them. Every time Carnage has shifted hosts, we have received a new and different version of the villain. Some of them act as nightmare fuel, while others are more run-of-the-mill chaos breeders. So let's take a look at all the characters who have hosted the Carnage symbiote. Cletus Kasady. The first host is the most obvious one on our list. Cletus was a serial killer who was locked in the same cell as Eddie Brock. This is when Venom broke into prison to help Eddie escape. A true wholesome bro moment, if I may say so myself. Eddie was not aware of the fact that Venom was actually due to birth an offspring at any moment. So when the black symbiote entered the cell and fused back with Eddie Brock, he left his newborn child on the cold prison cell floor. This offspring came to be known as Carnage in future comics. The offspring immediately entered Cletus's body through a cut on his hand. The symbiote merged with Cletus's bloodstream and the original Carnage was born. Immediately after his birth, Carnage realized two things. One of them is that he hated his father for abandoning him. And the second, he has an insatiable need for death and destruction. The rest is history. The Crimson Leviathan. This is a rather interesting one, and it is actually two separate minor and unnamed characters. Once upon a time, Carnage bonded with a great white shark. He roamed the seas, terrorizing anything it came across. He then found a boat full of fishermen and seized this opportunity. As quick as lightning, Carnage entered the boat and bonded with a whaler. Soon after that, he was slicing and dicing through the crew. He did this in an attempt to be strong enough to aid the hive mind of symbiotes called the King in Black. But what Carnage did not know was that Venom had already usurped King in Black's throne. Oh, my poor little murderous child.
There's gonna be carnage.
Next up we have Spider Carnage. Back when Ben Reilly was the main Spider-Man, he had to take on too much power and way too much responsibility. Carnage was running loose, so Ben caught the symbiote and fused with it to create the being we called Spider Carnage. The murderous rage of the symbiote threatened to take over Reilly's mind, but his mental fortitude persisted. He held on long enough to get Carnage back to Ravencroft. Reilly even tried to kill the symbiote by exposing himself to a lethal dose of microwaves. But the slippery symbiote ran back to Kasady. Goblin Child. Comic fans know how dangerous the Osborn family is. All of their members have been a goblin at one point or time. Normie Osborn is the child of Harry and Liz. He was one of the more docile characters in the Spider-Man comics. But then his father, the original Green Goblin, got hold of the Carnage symbiote. Norman fused with the Clinter and transformed into the Red Goblin. Red Goblin then proceeded to infect his grandson with the symbiote's fragment. This created a monstrosity called Goblin Child. You think the Batman who laughs was unnerving? Wait till you get a load of this. Karl Malus, Superior Carnage. Dr. Karl Malus was a minor villain in Superior Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery. He was also the host of Carnage after the lobotomy of Cletus Kasady. This version of the villain was dubbed Superior Carnage. He was actually mind-controlled by another villain called the Wizard. Wizard, Claw, and Superior Carnage battled Superior Spider-Man. They were ultimately defeated by the hero. This was the first time that the villain was showcased using traditional weapons. Carla Unger. Carnage symbiote once died while he was incarcerated. The carcass of the symbiote was retrieved by scientists. One of the people who was researching the symbiote was Dr. Carla Unger. The symbiote eventually fused with her. She then killed her abusive husband as Carnage. But Carla did not have a happy ending. The symbiote consumed her and moved back to Kasady. Quite tragic if you ask me. Red Goblin. One of the more heinous villains in Spider-Man comics is the Red Goblin. You see, after the Secret Empire storyline, Carnage was liberated from the S.H.I.E.L.D. Vault. His liberator? None other than Norman Osborn. Osborn still had the Goblin Serum in his veins, but did not have any of his old powers. Eventually, the two fused into the monstrosity called Red Goblin. Carnage only wants mindless slaughter, but Osborn helped him crave a more organized chaos. The combination of Goblin Serum and symbiote powers made the Red Goblin immune to supersonic waves. This made him almost indestructible and very dangerous. Wizard. Bentley Whitman is a minor villain in the Marvel-verse. He is known as the Wizard because of his psionic powers. After a skirmish with Superior Spider-Man, Wizard was fatally injured. Carnage was bonded with Dr. Carl at this point in time. But after Superior Carnage's defeat, the symbiote found and fused with Wizard. The Claw did get Carnage off Wizard eventually. Some good did come out of the bond as the symbiote healed Wizard's injuries. Eddie Brock. Carnage was also bonded with Eddie Brock for a short while.
You are a loser.
It was after the official defeat of Cletus Cassidy, during the part where Eddie absorbed almost all of Rogue's symbiote into his own body. Eddie was even invited to join the Avengers at this point, but he was not as stable as he liked to believe. Carnage was slowly gnawing at his psyche and almost overpowered him. Soon, Eddie left the Avengers and went back to the island where Null used to reside. Here, the Carnage symbiote overtook Eddie. This led to a complex story arc that I won't spoil for the fans. But I can tell you that at the end of it all, the Avengers had to come and save Eddie. Scorn, Tanis Neptune. So this one is a bit of a misnomer. There was a time when Carnage was ripped apart in space by Sentry. The symbiote fell to Earth but survived the fall by becoming dormant. A scientist retrieved the symbiote's remains and used it to create prosthetic limbs with the help of Dr. Tanis Neptune and Shriek. Shriek is Carnage's main love interest in the comics, but that is not important right now. Eventually, the dormant symbiote in Tanis' prosthetic awakens and takes over Tanis. Suddenly, Carnage had a new life. The symbiote does return to Cletus Cassidy, but not before giving birth to a child. This newborn Clinter bonds with Tanis and creates a new hero called Scorn. So Scorn is technically Carnage's child, but Tanis did host Carnage for a while. John Jameson. John was the warden of the prison where Carnage was kept. He was just minding his business when the symbiote escaped his cell through water pipes. The red symbiote made its way to the warden's room. There he bonded with John and became Carnage for a brief moment, before abandoning the poor man and moving on to possess Spider-Man. Carnage Cosmic, Norrin Rad. There was a time when Galactus consumed a planet with numerous symbiotes on it. This resulted in the race memory becoming a part of him and some being transferred to Silver Surfer. So when the Surfer came to Earth to visit Fantastic Four, Carnage leapt to him from Cassidy. This resulted in creation of a monstrosity that was called Carnage Cosmic. The being was glorious in design and concept, but it was not meant to last. Soon the symbiote was returned to Cassidy, who was dying of stomach cancer. Those were all the characters that Carnage has bonded with over the years. Did we miss any? Let us know in the comments below. And keep watching this space for everything Marvel, DC, and Hollywood.